There's a notification sound somewhere near you right now, or there will be soon. Maybe it's already happened 3 times since you sat down. A small pulse of warmth, the knowledge that someone, somewhere, thought of you. And your brain did something you didn't ask it to do. It released a little reward, a tiny chemical signature of pleasure. You felt it and didn't even notice you felt it, because it's so ordinary now, so baseline, that the absence of it would feel like a kind of starvation. You do this every day. You check, you look, you reach, almost without knowing it, for signs that someone out there is oriented toward you, and when you find one, something ancient in your chest goes quiet for a moment. Now strip all of that away. No phone, no text, no language complex enough to say what you mean. You are standing in a world 70,000 years ago, and you want to communicate something to a specific person. Something that has no name yet. Something that makes your hands feel like they don't belong to your body. And you have no blueprint, no tradition, no wedding industry, no poetry, no word that means I choose you above all the others. So the question is this. Before the love song, before the poem, before the ring, how did early human beings actually fall in love? Let's start with the most obvious threat to the whole idea, the brain. Because here's the thing nobody mentions in any romantic retelling of human prehistory. The brain your ancestors were working with was not a romantic instrument. It was a survival calculator. Every cognitive resource it had was allocated to problems that would kill you before morning. Predators, exposure, starvation, tribal conflict. The human nervous system, 100,000 years ago, was essentially running the same background program it still runs today. Scan for threats, conserve energy, stay alive. Romance, as a concept, had to muscle its way into that architecture without an invitation. And here's the part that changes everything. It did, because evolution doesn't care about poetry. It cares about what works. And what worked, apparently, was the specific and bewildering tendency to fixate on one particular individual in a way that reorganized your priorities around their survival and presence. Anthropologist Helen at Rutgers University spent decades studying the neuroscience of attraction and found that romantic love activates the brain's reward system in ways almost identical to addiction, flooding the caudate nucleus with dopamine, creating the same craving, the same obsessive focus, the same withdrawal when the person is absent. This wasn't invented by Greek playwrights. This was a biological mechanism, already ancient when humans first started drawing on cave walls. The feeling came first. The words came later. Much, much later. But feelings are invisible. So how did they move between people? This is where it gets actually fascinating because the first language of love wasn't spoken at all. It was physical, and it was extraordinarily specific. Primatologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford has argued that social grooming, the act of picking through someone's hair, cleaning small wounds, making physical contact that serves no immediate survival purpose, was the original bonding mechanism in early human communities. Borrowed directly from our primate ancestors. Watch chimpanzees for an afternoon, and you'll see it. Who grooms whom matters. It signals alliance, safety, preference. It is a statement made without words that says, "You are worth my time and attention when nothing is forcing me to give it." Your ancestors did the same thing. And here's the nobody tells you part. Grooming wasn't just comfort, it was communication. It released oxytocin and the same bonding hormone that floods a mother's brain during nursing. In both the groomer and the groomed. Every deliberate touch was a chemical message. And in a world with no alphabet, a world where sound disappeared the moment it was made, a hand placed gently on someone's arm in the dark was a declaration. Think about what it meant to be chosen for that. In a group of 20, 30 people, all hungry, all cold, all running on the edge of what the body could sustain, to have someone spend their limited energy on you was not a small thing. It was enormous. It was, in the only currency that existed, expensive. But here's what makes this more complicated than pure biology. Early humans weren't just bonding chemically, they were watching each other with extraordinary attention. And what they were watching mattered in ways we're only beginning to understand. Archaeological evidence from sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa, dating back 75,000 years, shows early humans using ochre, a red iron oxide pigment, for body decoration. Intentional self-presentation, the shaping of appearance to communicate something. Researchers including Francesco D'Errico at the University of Bordeaux have argued these aren't just symbolic behaviors in the abstract. They are the earliest evidence of individuals crafting a version of themselves to be perceived. You did this morning? Probably without thinking about it. You chose what to wear. You checked how you looked. You shaped the version of yourself that would be seen. 75,000 years ago, someone was doing the same thing, grinding pigment into their skin in a deliberate pattern, and someone else was watching them do it, feeling something that had no name. That feeling was already selecting for attentiveness, for imagination. Because to understand that another person is constructing their appearance to be seen and to care about being that person's audience requires a theory of mind that separates early humans from almost everything else that has ever lived on this planet. Now here's the part that doesn't get enough attention: music, specifically the voice. Because before instruments, before percussion, before anything that archaeologists could dig up and date, there was the human voice doing something that wasn't quite language and wasn't quite animal sound. It was something in between. Musicologist Joseph Jordania at the University of Melbourne has proposed that early human groups used a practice called contact calls, rhythmic, melodic vocalizations designed to signal location and identity and group membership. And embedded in those calls, inevitably, were qualities that communicated something individual, a particular timbre, a particular rhythm, the way a specific voice moved. We are still doing this. The first thing you notice about a voice, before the words, before the content, is something you cannot name but cannot ignore. A quality, a texture, a frequency that either settles you or doesn't. This is ancient preference signaling running underneath every conversation you've ever had, and here is where it all converges. At the intersection of touch, decoration, voice, and sustained attention, you have something that isn't quite love yet, but is already becoming its architecture. Biological anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy at UC Davis has written extensively about how the demands of human infants, uniquely helpless, uniquely dependent, requiring years of intensive care, almost certainly drove pair bonding in early human communities. Not romance for its own sake, but something that looked like it. Sustained mutual investment, exclusive alliance, the tendency to orient preferentially toward one individual when choices had to be made. What made that selection meaningful? What made it feel like something rather than nothing was the inner life underneath it. The part that keeps you awake. The part that notices when someone is absent from a group before you've consciously registered they're gone. The part that reorganizes your attention around a person's presence without your permission. That part is not new. That part is very, very old. So here is what actually happened across thousands of years and thousands of different human groups in places ranging from the coasts of southern Africa to the frozen river valleys of Ice Age Europe. Two people found themselves in proximity repeatedly. One of them began to organize small behaviors around the other. A touch that lasted slightly longer than necessary, a pigment pressed into skin on a morning when that person would be watching, a call sent out into the dark in a particular direction. The other noticed. Their brain rewarded the noticing. They began in turn to organize their own small behaviors, and in the gap between these two nervous systems, something built itself that neither of them could name or control or fully understand. Love, in its earliest form, was not a feeling that arrived and was then expressed. It was a set of behaviors that, practiced over time, became a feeling. It was attention, chosen and maintained. It was presence, offered at cost. It was the slow and wordless act of making one person into the center of your orientation when you had no language to explain why. Your ancestors did this with their hands and their voices and their bodies and their ochre-stained faces in firelit darkness without a single word for what they were doing. And somewhere in your nervous system, that entire history is still running. The pull you feel towards specific people and not others. The specific quality of attention you give to someone when you are beginning to love them. The way their absence registers before your conscious mind catches up. That is not modern. That is not cultural. That is prehistoric hardware, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of selection for exactly this behavior. You didn't learn to fall in love, you were built for it. Long before the love song, long before the ring, long before anyone had a word for what they were feeling. Your ancestors were already feeling it and acting on it and building lives around it. The feeling came first. Everything else is commentary.